Hi guys, welcome to this tutorial. I'm looking at paper 2 today. This is the 2020 AQA paper and I'm going to be looking at question 3, the language question. So in case you guys have not been able to access this paper, I'll just put on source A because that's the only source that this question actually refers to. So you can obviously have paused that and had a look at it. Okay, there's the second part of it. Right, so question 3 we know is the language question. We know that with this task there won't be an extract printed, so the thing you need to do straight away is look at what those lines are. You need to then go to find that part in the extract. And what we're looking for here is how does the writer use language to describe how he feels? Nice open question. Guys, I must apologise if you can hear a weird noise. My dog's under the table snoring. So if we have a look at this is, how is he using language to describe how he feels? The terrible sliding stopped and I hung silently against the slope. So starting off here. So what I'd be doing is going through initially to think about what different things do I want to talk about. Well, a thing that I'm certainly drawn to is that metaphor about the wave of nausea and pain swept over me. He's feeling sick with the level of pain that he's in. And then we've got this almost sadistic, I was glad of the freezing blasts of snow biting into my face. So we've got some personification. We've got like the noun phrase, freezing blasts of snow, just showing it's an unusual sort of idea to feel glad of that, but it helps him, obviously his head clears, doesn't he? And then we've got another thing, a flare of agony. That's a nice metaphor to mention. We've got another noun phrase here, this sickening grisly crunch of the sort of bones, sort of grating. And let's have right, shook, gritted my teeth and waited, the terrible sliding. So there's lots of verb choices that I might mention here as well. The idea of where is it, sobbing, the leg shook uncontrollably. We might zoom in on the adverb there, uncontrollably, showing that he's unable to have even control over his own body. So even the referring to it as the terrible sliding, that this is a terrible, very sort of traumatic and difficult event for him to experience. So definitely spend a little bit of time, not too long, a minute or so, deciding which elements you want to talk about in your response. Now, when I've shown you my example here, this is the start of a grade 9 quality response. And for this, I know lots of schools don't like P anymore or teach you different versions, so you might do what, how, why. Some schools don't even give you structures, they just like you to kind of go for it. So, but my kind of point here is, I think that for a 12-mark question, we're looking for, at least 3 quite developed points. So you would aim to be spending around 18 minutes on this question, and therefore I would expect at least 1 to 1.5 maybe sides in terms of the response to this. Henry, stop snoring. Sorry. I would approach this in exactly the same way that I would advise you to approach a paper 1, which is to always begin with the writer uses. The writer uses something, example, to do something else. So that's just your core principle of how to start this. So the writer uses the metaphor. So I'm straight away bringing in the idea of technique, and there's my example of that metaphor, a wave of nausea swept over me, to describe the sudden pain and sickness caused by his injuries. I think this is a useful thing to do. They're using something to do something, and that could be a range of purposes, but really I'm thinking about why, what and why the writer is doing something. Now, so that's my old school appoint evidence and then explain, but it's fairly brief. To be pushing up into the marks, what I want to be doing is sort of zooming in on words within that quote. That's why it's quite often a good idea to do a slightly bigger quote with bits that you can kind of pick into and develop the understanding and the meaning of that. So I'm going to zoom in on the image of the wave. So the image of wave suggests something unstoppable and powerful. So I'm really thinking about language and its meaning there. The verb swept adds to the sense of intense power and implies that he felt overwhelmed and almost consumed by this pain. So I've got here much more in the way I've moved into the kind of perceptive effects of the language. So really you've just got to try and add and build onto it. So, you know, I've taken wave and then I've added to it. I've found more evidence, I've expanded and built on it. And I continue to do that here. This is developed by the writer's use of the extended noun phrase. So I've got another method here. Sickening, gristly, crunch. Adjective sickening builds on the nausea the writer felt, and gristly connotes something painful and graphically injurious. So, you know, it's we get this real, it evokes this sense of the injury that Joe Simpson has experienced. So I've sort of done 1.5-ish points here, I guess. So I think for this question, if I did 2 of this amount, you know, if I did double what I've done here, I'd be looking at full marks. Or I could kind of carry on building this and do another chunky point added onto it. But it's about, you know, this getting high marks on this question is about, are you zooming in on this language and really trying to perceptively explain what do words make us think about? How does that link that into the question in terms of, you know, how is the writer in this case describing how he feels? So our takeaways are, always start with the writer uses, get methods in there and examples, explain what they're being used to do, and then zoom in. Try if you can to find kind of patterns and connections within it and think about how a writer might develop a particular image through a different example. Okay, hope that was useful. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time.